Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschadate Shatharine Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindubhya Eva Chapatithanam Bhavanibhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasati Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. Very grateful for this opportunity to be with all of you. Thank you, Gopal Bhatta Prabhu, for your most valuable presentation. Srila Prabhupada wrote in one place that the purpose of our Krishna consciousness movement is to give people the opportunity to associate with devotees. Today, it's all so bewildering to me, this internet. But it's the means by which we could connect practically with the whole world. So often I go to a place, and whether it's a corporate place or a government place or a university area or an environmental conference, and people know practically everything about me by the internet. I never saw them before. So this is very important in this age that we're living in, and especially as it's progressing. If we have a powerful presentation on the internet, through these types of websites and outreaches that Gopal Bhatta Prabhu was speaking about, we could, every level of society we could reach in a very powerful, penetrating way. So thank you for taking this so seriously. I think everyone knows it, but everyone's so busy with so many different responsibilities, for projects, for families, for occupations, to really bring our focus and our attention together in a unified way to present something powerful is really the challenge that is before us. Yesterday, I wasn't here, but I heard some of my well-wishers took notes on everything that was being said, and I reviewed them. And we learned about various models that are proving themselves very effective for outreach to Western people. We heard from His Holiness Devamrita Swami Maharaj. We heard from Kalakanta, His Grace Prabhu. We heard from His Holiness Baji Narayan Maharaj, Tukaram Prabhu, Mahatattva Prabhu. Each has its own uniqueness. Each of these different projects is approaching people in a particular time, a particular place, and in a particular mindset. But one thing that I think is common in all of them is they're focusing on giving people an accessible opportunity to associate with devotees. When Srila Prabhupada began this movement in the 1966, in San Francisco and the Lower East Side of New York. It was primarily the counterculture that was coming. And actually, these storefronts were completely accessible and relevant to the counterculture. It was, as soon as they walked in the door and they smelled the incense and they saw the posters of these incredible divine personalities from India on the walls, and they felt right at home. And it was mostly the kinds of people that they were living with and mixing with that were there. And that's the way most of our temples were in those early days. We were really relevant to the audience, and there was a large audience that was receptive to Krishna consciousness. Things have changed in such an incredibly wonderful way. Because what I see today is we had a small audience of the counterculture, which was one sector of society that was taking interest. But today, practically every sector of society is potentially really, really interested in Krishna consciousness, if we present it in a relevant way. The young people in the universities, the high schools, are always receptive, if we just connect to them. I remember the first time I met devotees in India. It was during this Cross Maidan Pando program. I was just coming down from the Himalayan mountains, and I had long matted hair, and I was wearing robes of a sadhu. And one of the leading preachers in all of ISKCON, he was really a senior leader, he preached to me. And he preached to me so strongly, so passionately. And he was trying to attract me to Krishna consciousness on one theme. That chanting Hare Krishna will bring you to a higher place than taking LSD. And he went on and on and on like that. And he completely turned me off. Because, in Afghanistan, I took too much drugs or something involuntarily, and I took a vow never to take drugs again, and I was living with seasoned sadhus, and he was treating me like a hippie. And he was so enthusiastic. It's better than LSD. I know you like LSD, but this is better than LSD. It'll get you higher. And I was thinking, God, I don't want Krishna consciousness if it has anything to do with LSD. But when I think back, he was so expert at making hundreds and hundreds of people devotees because that was relevant to them. But it turned me off totally because it wasn't at all relevant to me. So the common principle that's always there in our movement is to present Krishna consciousness as it is in a way that is relevant to the people we are speaking to. In the world today, it's people from the counterculture who are now in government, in corporations. They're ruling the world in many ways. But they're no longer interested in the counterculture, but they're still open-minded. Actually, corporate America, Europe, and India is extremely receptive to Krishna consciousness. We've seen it. We just have to somehow or other get in there and explain our principles to them. They're willing to transform. Unity in diversity is really the basis of our whole philosophy. And it's what government and corporations and so many other organizations are really struggling with. Because there's people from India, and there's people from Africa, and there's people from China, and there's people from South America, and they're all sitting in the same offices these days. And they all have different values and different ideas how to create unity and diversity. I speak to CEOs and board members of major corporations. This is a big issue. And when they hear that there's spiritual ways of approaching this, and Krishna consciousness has such powerful, clear, and penetrating ways of approaching these principles, they'll open their hearts to hear from us. It has to be relevant. Governments, just about five days ago in London, I gave a talk at an international think tank. It was just me speaking, and a man who was previously the communication directors of the United Nations asking me questions. And there were 14 ambassadors to nations who were sitting there at the table, and many others too. And I was just speaking about Krishna conscious philosophy in answers to their questions, trying to make it in such a way that it was relevant for them. And I was getting all these invitations to these nations I never heard of by these ambassadors, because they're really looking, they're hungry. It's unbelievable, the world, the way it is today. Tukaram Prabhu was speaking about the yoga community. There is a large community of people who are like this far from Krishna, if we could just make that connection for them. I remember in the 80s, early 80s, late 70s, I was going to colleges and speaking. And I did that for about 8 years. And it was always a struggle, but if we just somehow or other presented Krishna consciousness in a way that people were comfortable to associate with devotees, there was major transformations in many people's lives. But more recently, I gave a talk at Princeton University. There was a couple hundred people there, all students and professors. And after the talk, everyone was coming and bowing down. That never happened in the 1960s or 70s or 80s. But because of the culture of the Dalai Lama's influence and the yoga peoples, actually American people have a culture of bowing down to a religious person, a spiritual leader. And they're not just bowing down, but they're really opening their hearts to hear. And that door is open to every single one of us, if we can just somehow or other present Krishna consciousness in a medium that is relevant to them. The yoga community, incredible. Incredible how many people could be completely transformed and accept Prabhupada's message. And we also have the environmentalist community, which is gigantic. Since we started a little eco-village in Mumbai and got a couple awards for water harvesting and sewage refinery in natural ways, you just say that. Yesterday I was at MIT giving a talk, and so many people who heard about that were asking and wanting to network. And the principle that Srila Prabhupada gave in simple living, high thinking is such an incredibly powerful bridge to take the earnest need for environmental ecological awareness, which is only going to grow as things get more polluted, where people really are looking for solutions. And we have solutions. Deep, core solutions on a spiritual level, on a level of awareness and consciousness. and how people really are searching and receptive. Universities, colleges, medical, conferences among doctors and administrators of hospitals. Extremely receptive and hungry for information of spiritual solutions. And as His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj and others have said, in today's world, a lot of people are really turned off by sectarian organized religion, for obvious reasons. Because in the 1960s and 70s, it wasn't such an issue for us. We had our own world that we were living in. But today, with the terrorism and the arrogance of various hypocritical religious news that's coming, thoughtful people are really sick of religious people saying, we're the best. Other people are bad. If we want to make really fanatical devotees, that's really a good way of preaching. But if we want the thoughtful leaders of society, which Srila Prabhupada wanted, we actually have to present things the way Srila Prabhupada opened the door for us to do so. I remember when I was first sent out to do preaching or outreach in 1979, I started going to colleges and universities. And in those days there was no databases or internet, so I somehow tried to get as many letters as I could of Srila Prabhupada giving instructions. And I only got about 2 or 3 letters. But to this day, what I wrote, what I read in those letters is foundational to everything I try to do. In one letter, Srila Prabhupada wrote, just giving a lecture here or there is not going to have much effect. We need to regularly cultivate people in Krishna consciousness. And these different projects that we heard presentations yesterday from are facilitating that, places where people could regularly be cultivated in the association of devotees. And another thing Srila Prabhupada said, he said the people in the universities, they are the future leaders of society. They are intelligent. Do not tell them that Krishna consciousness is best. It will turn them away. Present our teachings in such a way that they will come to that conclusion by their own intelligence. And I was doing the opposite. And when I read that letter and I started trying to apply it, it was miraculous. It's very important that we really have faith in what we've been given by Srila Prabhupada. There's nothing to fear. We have the most wonderful explanation to the solutions of the problems that people really are trying to address and struggling with. The basic principles that we take so for granted, because we hear it so many times, that I'm not this body, I'm a spirit soul. If it's presented in a relevant way to address people's issues, it's revolutionary to them. It's absolutely transforming to them. I'm not my body, I'm a spirit soul. It's quite incredible. And the principle of chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, the principle of seva, that sometimes because we're so familiar with them, we don't understand the potency of how it could affect people's hearts and people's lives. In today's world, our Bhaktivedanta Hospital, an example. All over the world, it's very powerful that here in this hospital, there's Ayurveda, there's allopathy, there's homeopathy, there's naturopathy, there's acupuncture, and everyone's working together. Because usually medicine is just like religion. I am the way, the truth, and the life, and everyone else from every other division is a quack. It's witchcraft. It's poisoning the world with nuclear energy. Everyone has their egos. But when we can actually show this idea of unity in diversity in practice, people's hearts really open up. Because thoughtful people really are disgusted with all the fighting going on. Krishna consciousness has such amazing ways of addressing people with addictions. It's a huge field. Alcoholics and drug addicts are among the most influential people on the planet. I remember I was in London not too long ago, and one very, very famous entertainer came to see me. And he was very much a drug addict in the past, and he recovered. And as I was walking out with him, I went into the restaurant at Soho Street, and there was another man there. And he said, you know, I know him, because I go to the AA meetings with him. And he told me the names of the people that would regularly come to that AA meeting. And they're among the most influential, famous people on the planet. He named about 30 names of the people. Krishna consciousness, Srila Prabhupada, he oftentimes addressed this idea that there were so many people addicted to drugs and alcohol and all those things, but now they're living pure lives because of their Krishna consciousness. We really have solutions. The AA talks about taking shelter of a higher power than themselves, but there's no definition. And many people, as was explained yesterday evening, they're not so much inclined toward a fearful, wrathful God. But the higher power of Krishna is so absolutely beautiful. Such, if Krishna is presented in a way that we're sensitive and we're to open people's hearts to hear, we have a major impact. So what I'm saying is there are so many various communities in the world today, government, corporate, addictions, environmentalists, yoga people, administrators in universities and students. The world is really open to receive Krishna consciousness like never before since our movement was established. It's the greatest opportunity for spreading our movement. If we think it should be like the good old days, it's only because we're not seeing the potential of the present day, which I believe is hundreds and thousands of times more open. but not necessarily the same way. The same Krishna consciousness never changes. We may get millionaires and billionaires and family people and farmers and villagers becoming Krishna conscious at their homes and really contributing tremendously in every way to our movement. In the 60s and 70s, we were very much a temple community, a temple culture. If we try to repeat that exactly the same way, we're missing many opportunities. Certainly bringing brahmacharis to the temples and developing the resources for the temple, human resources, is very, very vital and important. But when I was an early devotee, the only congregational person I ever heard about in the whole planet was George Harrison. Now, most all of Prabhupada's disciples are congregational devotees. And when Srila Prabhupada quotes Lord Chaitanya at the house of the Kurma Brahmin, where he wanted to leave and join Lord Chaitanya, and Lord Chaitanya said, no, you stay, you take care of your family, you do your job, but you always chant Hare Krishna, and you share the teachings of Bhagavad Gita with others. And Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says same thing. That's what Lord Chaitanya told everyone, everywhere, when he was preaching through South India. There's no need to change your position, just change your consciousness. And in this sense, the world is really open. Millions of people are becoming Buddhists simply because it's being made relevant to them. Krishna consciousness, the concept of a personal, loving God is so much deeper and more relevant if we could just get the message to them. Another interesting observation I've had is various religious yoga communities and other such alternative ways, communities. One of the most powerful forms of changing people's consciousness in a very deep way is retreats. People want to get away from their monotonous life and absorb themselves in something spiritual. And many times they don't even care what it is. Millions and millions of people are going to meditation retreats where they're not allowed to talk for 10 days. Millions are going to yoga, or thousands are going to different yoga retreats. Krishna consciousness, if we present retreats, as Gopal Bhatta Prabhu was speaking before, that are educational to them. We can teach them so many arts that are very, very easy for them to want to learn. Cooking, or some asanas, or some philosophy, or concepts of natural living. And include the pure teachings of bhakti, include the kirtan of the holy names, and get people to really feel a part of a family, and their lives really transform. Retreats are incredible. We have retreats for our own devotees, which are really valuable. But to engineer retreats for the general society. If we do it well, it will have amazing results. And I think the basis is to get people to feel an attraction to associate with devotees. But then we have to really be devotees. If they feel kindness, if they feel compassion, most people don't like to be insulted. Now sometimes devotees, we think people like it because we're speaking the truth. But we have to kind of see ourselves through the eyes of them too. That's what Srila Prabhupada did. Even if he insulted somebody, they would like it. If there are many famous stories, but Gargamuni Prabhu and Brahmananda Prabhu, when their mother came for initiation, Srila Prabhupada told them to touch the feet of their mother and put the dust on their head. Now she was eating meat, and she was not a devotee, but her life changed. Just the fact that Swamiji is giving me such respect. My children never did that before. They never gave me any respect before, but because they're with Swamiji, now they're respecting me. This is very good. And she remained a friend for the rest of her life and a supporter. That's my understanding. So we don't have to compromise our teachings, but to present it in such a way where if people feel loved, if the people feel valued, if the people feel cared for, then they'll open our hearts. And if we have ways of educating them and bringing them to the path of pure bhakti, we have an audience of hundreds of millions of people. And one interesting observation, Srila Prabhupada came to the West and got Americans and a few Europeans to take to Krishna consciousness. And when Prabhupada went back to India, he had no one. He only had his Western disciples. And he had his Western disciples. He trained his Western disciples to have a huge impact on the Indians. Today, during Prabhupada's time, I don't think there was more than a few Indians in India that got initiated by Prabhupada. It was the Western people that were in charge of Vrindavan and Mayapur and Mumbai and Hyderabad and so many places. Today, there's large sums of Indians, maybe hundreds and thousands who are initiated in India. And in the West, most of our temples are very much predominated by people from India. From a perspective of preaching to the Western world, this is a super excellent opportunity to do the same thing Prabhupada did. He got Western people to get the Indians interested in Krishna consciousness. The Indians who are coming to our temple, many of them are in big places where they can reach people that can influence the world more than the Western people. If we could inspire our Indian congregation to actually get the spirit of Srila Prabhupada, the spirit of those early Western people who went to India, the spirit of sharing bhakti in every possible way, it's incredible what they could do. They can get us in the biggest corporations, in government houses, in universities, in colleges. to speak to Western people in ways that are so easy for them, that are very much apparently inaccessible to us. And I believe this is Srila Prabhupada's way of expanding ISKCON. He saw every situation, what it is, and what the opportunities are with what he had. If we're united, if we have a common vision. Thank you very much. It's amazing how at one time we were the only kirtan singers outside of India. And now we're a minority. Most people hardly heard of us. Now we could be thinking, that's terrible. And it is. But what an opportunity. People already love kirtan. They already accept kirtan. Let's enter into that community of kirtan and give pure bhakti. And people are hungry. Kirtan has become a form of spiritual entertainment. But actually, so many of those people are really hungry for a deep spiritual connection that they're not going to get by the entertainers. They're going to get by real practitioners of bhakti. Is there any questions? Yes, Maharaji.
Wait about 10 minutes for questions.
Sure.
I actually agree with you, Hare Krishna. But in my traditional role as a devil's advocate, those who know me that, I've listened to the Dalai Lama when he has his huge crowds, and he just offers pablum. So, sure, if we, couch it in, let's all love everybody and you can say you can deliver our message, but what about the argument that you have to, if we just water it down and then gradually we're going to give it to them in the future, the full story, and speak like the Dalai Lama in glittering generalities, we'll have so many people. But what about boiling the milk and, rather than watering it down? And, we don't even say the word God or Krishna. It just, Prabhupada said I'd have so many followers if I'd never introduced the regulative principles. So we just keep that in the background for 4 years. What about that when people say that?
We shouldn't water anything down, but we could present the truth in ways that really are exciting and relevant to people.
You said, when they hear in the right phrase, the right term, right condition, we're not this body, it's revolutionary. It's life-changing for them. How is that different than the way we're already saying it?
I was just reading a lecture of Srila Prabhupada, where he was giving it to a general broad of people. And he was very much emphasizing that whether you follow Christianity or whether you follow Islam or whether you follow, he even said Buddhism, if you develop pure love of God, that is true religion. That is true dharma. So he was speaking in that way. I don't think we have to hide the word God. Sometimes when Prabhupada gave speeches to common people, he used the word God more than Krishna. So I think we just have to have that maturity. We don't water things down, but we could present it in such a way. And in one sense, the concept, the idea of bridge preaching. Prabhupada had the Bhaktivedanta Institute, which was like a bridge for the scientist to Krishna consciousness. And, you know, they weren't telling about the cowherd boys dancing in the mouth of Aghasura. They were talking about Einstein and Newton and all of these different, you know, physics. But they were bringing them to the conclusions. So sometimes in a general audience of certain people, we present Krishna consciousness, not watering it down, but we just present as it is certain aspects to actually get people to really open their hearts. And the boiling of the milk, you have to have milk to boil. You know, that's what I believe cultivation and education is about, watering the milk. I mean, boiling down the milk. We bring them to deeper and deeper and deeper places. You know, in 26 Second Avenue, a lot of people who were coming, it was just, you know, chant and be happy and stay high forever. That's the way they were advertising it. They were not advertising in Tompkins Square Park or on the window of 26 Second Avenue, you know, surrender everything to Krishna. They were to stay high forever. And they'd come in, they'd be attracted, they'd associate with devotees, and after some time they actually learned about really surrendering to Krishna. So I don't think Prabhupada wanted us to stop preaching. When he talked about watering the milk, he meant really, really training and teaching those people who are our devotees to go really deep and deeper and deeper into pure, unalloyed devotional service. And that's our goal. When Prabhupada went to India to start, his main preaching was life membership, which was just to get people to be connected and to help out. But his purpose of the whole life membership is get them to give a donation, get them to start taking some books, get them to start associating with devotees, and gradually they'll become devotees. Many of them. Some of them won't, but many of them, they'll either be friends, they'll be well-wishers, or they'll be serious initiated devotees. So Prabhupada, in that sense, you know, he reached people. I think, you know, our initial way of reaching people can be in various ways to make that connection with the basic principles of bhakti and Krishna consciousness, and then actually giving them the deeper understandings and of the sacrifice of true devotional service. That's the boiling of the milk that comes after they're already open to be in our association. I use the example of Dalai Lama not in the content of what he speaks. I'm not trying to say we should be like that. I use that in a context that he has millions of people who honor and respect religious leaders from the East. And because of that, many people will come and hear from us. We don't speak the same thing, but it's really an opportunity. Does that address your question? Yes. But I don't think you're the devil's advocate, because you're Maya's advocate. Maya is an eternal loving servant of Krishna. She's an expansion of Srimati Radharani, who's indirectly bringing everybody back home, back to Godhead.
That is your prerogative.
Thank you. Gopinath Prabhu.
Would you permit me to just offer a little addendum to what you said?
Excuse me?
Could I just offer a little addendum to what you
Please.
said?
We need you.
If you go through that faith funnel, you fill the top of that faith funnel with seeds. You're just putting out seeds. And those seeds then begin to fructify. So the boiling of the milk notion, that's further down the funnel. And if there is no top parts of that funnel, it's very hard to start the faith process in the middle of that funnel. It's got to start at the top. So it's planting seeds that then later begin to find some soil and to then start, the fructification process.
That's what I was trying to say for the last 45 minutes. Thank you. Thank you very much.
You have to have milk before you can boil it, so you said it nicely.
Very well.
We could go on probably for the next hour with Mrs. Thomas, but it is time for a break. So we'd like to thank you for
Thank you.